you for speaking with us. Now, we know this is a sub judice case. We know that the merits of the case are being decided and determined and will be determined by the right authorities in the court. So we're not going into that. But Sanjay Asher, in terms of a corporate battle and on the question of rights, how crucial is the outcome of this case in laying a template for future investments in India?
No, it's an extremely important order which has been passed by the Delhi High Court so that the international investors get confidence into the Indian system, that after getting an emergency order from an international forum of arbitration, it shouldn't be that the Indian legal system does not recognize or does not honor that particular order. So to my mind, it's a very good order, and it sends good signals to the international investors and to the international business community as a whole.
I also want to ask you about the doctrine of implied consent. That is one of the arguments that Amazon is putting forth, that their deal with future coupons, in a sense, gives them a downstream investment in future retail. And that's really the crux of the debate on either side, the legal argument on either side. Does that also have ramifications? Can it really be that a stake in a company, which is a holding company, gives you the powers to enforce decisions on the prime company?
Yes, of course. It all depends on the agreement between the parties. And of course, I've not seen the agreement myself, but I'm sure the draftsman of the agreement would have taken care to see that it's not only binding on the Future Coupons Private Limited, but the downstream entities which actually carry on the retail business as well. So in other words, it all depends on what the wordings in the agreement is. And if the wordings are clear, that it binds the holding company and its shareholders as well, then surely that particular covenant is binding.
So once again, we're going to have to wait and see what comes out of this entire legal fight. Meanwhile, it's working on several fronts, right? The entire deal, Future and Reliance have gone to NCLT now. NCLT will start hearing only when it's clear what comes out of the Singapore Arbitration Center as well as the Delhi High Court. So it's all sort of stuck in the middle of this. Future Retail has been saying, and that's one of the arguments they presented in court, that if this deal doesn't go through, the company will essentially go bankrupt. They will have to, sack a large thousands and thousands of employees. Their vendors will not get paid. Banks will get stuck, etc. Pankaj Jaju, would that be a real condition to consider in the given circumstances? I mean, one would argue that at the end of the day, a deal is a deal. Whether, maintaining that deal bankrupts you or not would not really perhaps be a legal concern.
Well, I wouldn't be able to speak about the legality of this argument, but in terms of the current situation for retailers, reality is that pandemic has hit retail business hard, and retail is a business which has high fixed costs, and any downtrend in sales impacts the business. And Future Retail or Future Group on top of that had a reasonable level of leverage, and which is why they were pushed into doing a transaction. So I would believe that unless consumer sentiment comes back and business comes back properly, which then allows the business to continue, bad market conditions along with leverage and this deal getting dragged out will definitely impact Future Retail.
Harminder, how do you look at the entire situation coming in and the sort of the picture that I have painted in the introduction? Kishore Biyani right now getting squeezed between Jeff Bezos and Mukesh Ambani, and at stake is this business that he built up. Remember, he was the king of retail at one point in India.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you always say, there are when there are appointed positions, there you can say ex-governor or ex-something, but king is never an ex-king. King is a king. So yes, so leaving that part aside, I think if you really look at this whole thing, getting squeezed in between, also you look at the value which is on the table, the deal at which value which is happening and how attractive that deal is. You compare with any other retailer, India or internationally, the value of the business which is being put because of the leverage, because of the circumstances, right? I think it is a very small fraction of what the real value of the business is, the brand value, the locations, the team, processes, all of that put together, the value should be much, much higher because there are other retailers which are listed in the market in India and overseas, and value should be much, much higher. So it's, if you really think about it, this is a completely, he's getting shortchanged in the process because COVID has hit the business as well as him personally very, very hard. There's no doubt about that. Now, coming to this part that the battle really is between the two people who want to dominate the Indian retail, there's no doubt about it. Because the stake, I would say right now, what is at stake is one of the largest retailers in the country. And it's not only just the location, there are lots of people who have few 100, 200, 500 locations. There are thousands of locations and the brand names on it, which attract the consumer. It doesn't matter to the consumer who owns these companies, right? There is a brand called Lilliput, which went bankrupt many years ago. But even today, when the surveys are being done, they still come in the top 3 brands in the country in kidswear. Now compare that to, that's a very small example, the Big Bazaar, right? As a brand, it is the brand, it is probably the large format retail which millions of consumers, their first experience of large format consumer, or let's say shopping store was with Big Bazaar. Millions of them across the country. There's a huge, huge value in it. That's what it has stake, and that's where the fight is. Howsoever fierce it is, whosoever wins, but definitely it's a fight worth fighting for everyone involved.
You know, some would say that more than the number of stores, it's also become a bit of an ego battle, because future retail is just an example of how far this battle is going to go. Would you agree, Harminder, that future retail is just the first step? Ultimately, the battle is going to be between these two players for domination over the Indian retail landscape. I remember us speaking a few months ago when the Future Retail Reliance deal was inked, and that time Amazon was just somewhere in the background. We knew that they would want to be a major player.
So I think whether it's Mr. Ambani, Mr. Biyani or Mr. Jeff Bezos, anybody, I think if I agree with you that it's about ego, they'll all be offended. Because I think they're all very, very commercial-minded people. Very, very business sensitive, business centric people, and they've built large empires. So I think, like I said, that this is it's a very serious business matter, and what is at stake is a very important piece of the puzzle of the Indian retail. This is the largest piece, the best possible piece anybody could think of. This being in the market to be able to acquire at this value is a dream come true for anybody. Right? So I don't think it's about ego. It's a very commercial, it's a business decision. And like I said, it's worth fighting for. So even for Amazon, I don't know the legalities and everything, I don't understand, but just the FDI policy will not allow them to have it. That's where I think the whole mystery starts happening, that they can't have it, but they won't let anybody else have it too. That's where I think in between when you were asking Pankaj that how this thing is going to play out, because otherwise this company will go down. Yes, and again, it's a commercial thing. Nobody can come and save. If a white knight or any white knight, I don't know that list of competitors, who all does it include? I don't think it only has Reliance on that list. There are many, many more names will be there. That means nobody else can buy. We will not buy. We cannot invest because we are not allowed to. Where do we land up? So I think it is complicated. And I hope at the end of it, whosoever wins, I think the company should survive. That is the most important part. Because this is the first successful retailer of India, the largest retailer of India, the consumer, it has introduced organized retail to India. I think we all should be very proud of it and we all should be hoping that it survives. Whosoever owns it doesn't matter. But then matter gets complicated. The party who's stopping somebody else from owning it, they cannot own it. The law doesn't allow it.
Mr. Biyani will not be able to run it either way.
That won't happen.
Yeah. What's interesting is, Mr. Biyani cannot run it either way, because even the deal with Reliance says it has a non-compete clause. He and his family have to stay away from the retail industry, the retail business for the next 15 years. Mr. Jaju, what happens in both the possible scenarios for all three players? Your analysis. First scenario, that the deal doesn't go through. What does it mean for Amazon, Future and Reliance? And second scenario, the deal does go through. What does it mean for all three?
I guess in case the deal doesn't go through, I think it's a bad scenario for everyone. Simply because if the deal doesn't go through, like Harminder said, we don't know how Amazon will, be able to participate in the transaction. And in such situation, future retail as a company will definitely go under, and it will mean that banks don't get their money, a lot of vendors don't get paid, landlords get stuck. So it's a negative scenario, and more than that, I would think that the entire retail ecosystem, which has hundreds and thousands of small players, a lot of them will be in financial distress. They already are. COVID has really hurt everyone, and that would just get aggravated. If the transaction goes through, I guess Reliance will, acquire the chain and is the largest retailer in India today, and will become undisputably the largest offline retailer by far. I'm assuming that if the deal goes through, it will be with thorough legal, entire oversight, and hence, from an investor perspective, which was your first question, this would be a transaction which would, test the laws of the land and would emerge from that. So, in such a scenario, I think it probably will not hurt India's image either.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Everyone's waiting to see what outcome of this deal is. It's a template for other multinationals for investment in India. It raises the question of the validity of international arbitration in India when deals go sour, and of course, the future of the Indian retail landscape and the whole future group is at stake as well. So it's a space we're definitely tracking right here on ET Now. I want to thank all of you for joining us on this first discussion on the show this evening. Now.